shit. Morning. Oh, so we put a trade in early morning. Got filled here at 6:18 in the morning, took it short. Thought about adding in the 60s, ended up using the stop at 75. I wish I did. Also, had to wait forever for these moves to play out. News release, red folder is 5 minutes. Let's see what it is. The release is. Oh, it's just CAD permits. Okay, so we really didn't have to remove any risk. We could have just held it. That's okay. I don't know what's gonna happen when this comes out. We know at 10 o'clock shit's real. Our trades would probably be done by the day. I'm cool with stopping out here and waiting until what I'm looking for the open of the U.S. market. With that news coming at 10, I imagine the books will be kind of thin. I don't know. I don't really know what with that tariff announcement, the market was definitely sure. That's my guess. I think it's strong, sure. But, man, I fucked myself by taking this. Well, I would have gone. Oh yeah, they go 725 would have been 700. So you had 725, so the original stops for one, which was right here. And then I had 700s for the others, so left some money on the table. That's for sure. That's what I $67.
Sell stop and Q.
We just broke 3 grand on the live account. It's gonna be kind of hard to. I want to withdraw, obviously. I want my money, but it's gonna be kind of hard to want to give up that buffer. Now I got almost 3 grand worth of draw it. I usually only have to give 100, which allows me to. See you later! Love you! Love you, baby!
Sell ice for DS.
What else was done? Bye, baby! All they buses come in, sometimes they come right back. 700 is going to be some real.
Sell ice for CL.
I'm not adding. If this starts to pop up before 700. It says 700. Let's take it to 700. Where to look to reshort again? 75. Line it up there. So we're going to be doing some sit.
Buy ice for gold. Sell ice for CL.
So, here's a 30 my way up. Same for the other. That'd be cool. We still get these. The goal of the day is to not hit full stops if we don't have to, and to not add to any losers. Just take it on the chain. If we're gonna lose 180 on a trade, we're not gonna average in. Averaging in has been crucial for us for the profits. Though, to be real, like we had some times where this trade, boom, bought the market immediately went against this big ass pop, and then it slid almost 30 something points. I bought here, and then I was able to take some momentum, and a small gain on this. That was pretty good. And this thing turned around right at the right here, right at the 30s, it's like right here. So another one that had to average in, and this was a decent trade. This was a good trade. Okay, I remember this thing. I tried to short it, didn't fall, got fucked. Bought the market open. Got up too, and I bought again and I got fucked. And that's why I had to buy again. So yeah, averaging has been working out for me.
Sell iceberg CO. Sell iceberg CO. I could have had one with a very, very tight stop. Yeah, I'm not, man. I had one here where I took stop. Really lowers trading. Buy iceberg gold. Buy iceberg gold.
Delta's looking good over there. Oh, so tempting. Don't do it. Because I know once I go short, I'm going to fiddle with my stop and try to hold it longer than the 30. Because I'm like, alright, let's hold 48s. I'm going to do a break now. Not today. Today needs to be as mistake free as possible. See you later, Jada. This point of control is 25. Man, it's so tempting to add right here. So I only have 5 points first. Less than 5. So the pros that add into it would be able to control my risk by taking one off that 7. like an $8.
Sells Oxy out.
$8. Hold on. For 700. Go. This should also press this out. Well, that's fine. I guess we'll take one at 700.
YM85. My friend once started.
How Jones is doing what the NASDAQ is doing right now. Don't worry about it. The NASDAQ is pressing for down day. Low negative 4 months.
Sell isolate gold. Buy stock gold.
We don't have any of this stuff.
My friend once started.
75s. Could just hold 34s and go break even on this. It's fighting so hard right there. We'll get rid of it. We'll stop the trade on 34.
Buy stop and in here.
Damn, that would be big brain play if that shit goes down now and I move my stop up by 2 points. Literally, that would be crazy. Because it pushed up to 31.25. I seen it. And we were stops at 30.75. So I think it was just really the same for some. That's the power of bookman, though, like the precision. So I can never just trade using candles. You can trade using candles, you're like, I want to put my stop right here. It kind of looks good. Or like, you have no reason to buy it. Yes. The best you can see with the money that just go above it. A lot better. If it wasn't for a bookman, that was so good shit. Wow. 2 points. I like a fucking genius right now. Even if I step up. Money's at 700. Pressure here at 750. They've been sitting here for a while. I did not do They got swept. Oh yeah, the added one. Yeah. Oh shit. That's it.
stock gold. Buy stock gold. Sell iceberg gold.
That buy trend's too strong, it looks like. We want to see some offers stack up above here. Coke. There's a
NQH5. Sell trend 1 started.
Oh, almost missed that fucking move, didn't I? I'm gonna take off on here. Buy stocks. Close 25. Alright.
YNH5. Sell trend 1 started.
He hasn't even dipped into that 700 yet. Nice little add-on. That's what I was saying. Like, I didn't want to add because I wasn't really trying to do a lot of adding in it. But then I thought about it. How am I going to control my risk if it meets 700? If I only have one contract on, all I can do is put my stop loss here. Like, I'm not going to be able to get the big moves that I'm looking for. But we could definitely test 675s. Because they pulled 80s. They're pulling 80s. I don't know what this is about. This is brand new. And I have no idea. Maybe it's an add-on. We'll find out pretty soon here. UCB 14, negative 14. I could probably lock in more games in here. We'll lock it in. Damn, we're gonna be trading at new prices down here at 702. We have no data.
Sell stock NQ. Buy stock NQ.
That should hit that 700. That's good. That should pop. I still like my stop here because if we're going to test 25, we don't want to be out anything until we can test. If we lose the test, then it's going to pop up and stop itself. So this will simply just take off that extra contract that we added and break even. That's a definite spot for a reversal. That should just be red. Nah, I think so. No. Thank you. I'm gonna hold 700s. Well, 700 kids. I don't want to try this thing too close. Still we have a long contract. Thank you. Beautiful vibe here, though. Market is minus 1500. It's short side.
Sell ice break gold. Sell stock and feed.
They added at those 75. They added another 7. I love how the algos buy up those little prices and then make a quick move, make their money, you know. You think you want the dump, they got the shit. Looks like the move is going to be go ahead and take out 75s, possibly even lower, and then we can look at short 700 on the way back up. I don't want to really go full risk on right now, selling 700s, because the market's going to be opening pretty soon here. Damn, momentum is picking up though. Right. I think I said that yesterday. I don't want to add to positions when I see so many bids. Last time I was trying to go through a shitload of offers and I never can get up past we were stuck at 763 or some stupid shit all night long, but all afternoon long. We're not gonna fight the order book today. And this thing could really accelerate here. 690s and 685s are paper today.
Iceberg CL.
I believe a lot of people think this was support for the market. Looking at some of the other ones, because people are holding self-contracts or accumulating more self-contracts and holding for an expected result. Where you put this as well. I always try at the wrong y'all trying to go against it, but I know that the big money men are holding 1,700 contracts of insurance. But I think that my 700 is good to go on. Like, it's not good logic. Like the market. Sometimes you can get like a quick scalp though, you know, take off at 25 points, break even, and that's cool. But big move, you need to be on the side of that. Those chairs are going to tear this
Sell
part
stock
out.
and few.
I gotta go. It'll be a little heavier here. It's actually kind of good that we're not heavy because
Iceberg ES.
awesome to add on there. Although I was thinking like we could, but we're not going to add heavy goods to 75, so it'll have a more cranberry. Adding more. We take 75s and trade below it to 65, 60. I know this is far away, but if we do that, then I will move my stop loss to 675.
Buy Iceberg ES. Sell stock YM.
Good to see some momentum, man. Yesterday, oh my goodness, it was so fucking boring. There they go, they're gonna hit 75s. Let's see what they do though when they get there. Okay. We're good, we're gonna call that 700. If you get touched, please be in touch. I tell you though, this thing bounces to 60. We will hold 75.
Buy Iceberg and few. Sell Iceberg YM.
Iceberg, small iceberg.
Sell stock and few.
Registry. Oh, almost got tapped. Almost got tapped.
Sell Iceberg CL. Sell Iceberg CL. Sell Iceberg CL.
Let's say about enough. Look at all this stuff. Mo or minus 2,200. Last chance for cheap shorts. I might open up an account and just trade sides. I mean, little big numbers like that. Because if you just would have bought 700 for a 10 points, you could have got it there. You could have got your 10 points here up to 7 times. These would be like 10 points, 17 we get to 90 vibes. It does not stop me. I'm not at 8. Don't care. We're approaching our max profit. Anyway, more than half.
Buy stock gold.
Sell here, but all my stops at 95. Just let it play out.
Buy iceberg CL.
We're almost at 95.
Sell stock CL.
5. Don't give that too much. Added 92s. Adjusted for stops. 75.
MQH5. My friend one started. Get another rundown in the 70s. If we do get another rundown there, I am not letting this happen. So 50s. That's way too up. This is a buy trend. Lining up at this 50s just like I was thinking about. I was literally just thinking about doing it.
the wage level is super I don't want to hold higher than 5 to get the production up at 12. I could go 15, but I gotta go to 6. I could add my original risk if I wanted to at like 730 because we're gonna want to sell 700 anyway. But like I said, 725. We could look to get back into 725. Should have had a 12, but I guess that gets us back to that good shirt that we were wearing. What up? What you want? What you want from me? You know, I'll make poetry unless I got a recipe. Yeah. I was gonna do that rub. That good. You gotta take that shit out now, because if I have to get it, I want to split it. That shit gotta be fully thawed out. Oh, you're not gonna be gone, right? Oh, okay. I seen this little bit of liquidity up here. I was like, oh, we can hold so much more. Thought about it. This way allows you
Oh, I ain't worried about it. I ain't got nothing to hide. Alright, what do we got going on? I think they're accumulating a position for the short side, bro. I mean, they'll get dealt to 2,500 now. If we take a short here, which we're not, we'd have to put our stops 30 points, and that's above this, right above this liquidity spot. And we'll probably stop out. So since we'd have to put it a little bit higher, then we're going to say, oh, let me do a little bit more higher. Let me average in. There's going to be so many mixed emotions by the time we're that much down. We're just going to fuck up all the time.
Sell ice fit and fuse. Sell ice fit and fuse.
Definitely got our eyes on this 25s. What's going on with this thing, man?
stock Wyatt. Sell stock Wyatt.
Running that shit, running that shit, right? Running that shit, running that shit, running that shit. Running that shit, running that shit, right? Running that shit, running that shit, running that shit.
Original, I should have took the stop loss with the 2 count.
Running that shit.
I could have held the 2 days. Then we could have got some market open action.
Running that shit, running that shit.
She's going slow as hell.
Sell ice for ES. Buy ice for ES.
Man, why did I keep doing so slow? That like me so much. Should never take so long. Up in the fucking net.
Buy ice for NQ. Buy ice for ES.
Yeah.
Sell stock.
Call end it. Yep, just keep calling back. I'm recommending.
iceberg CL.
I gotta go back to the market, but hold on. Alright, what was I doing here before this? You got stopped out. Oh yeah, I was updating my journal. Yep. Just keep calling back. Yep. Hey man, morning. Sheesh, you had me a little worried. We were just talking about that the other day. No, I don't have the other day, but like a couple weeks ago. How's everything going with that? Yeah, damn, that's serious. Hope everything works out. Keep you comfortable. That's health is obviously the most important thing we got going. But shit, I ran that account up to over 3 grand. So yeah, 3,051. I needed the 8th trading day, which is today. 8th trading day. I'm gonna apply. I'm waiting for my ID to come in the mail. So if they ask me for ID, that'll definitely put a pause on it. If not, then if they deny, I'm just gonna keep trading the same way that I have been and just keep running it up. And because the only thing they could deny for is they'd be trying to say inconsistent risk. But I've been trading between 3 to 9 contracts. You got guys trading 3 minis. That's 30 to 90. So it's like, come on, bro. Definitely can't wait to get my first withdrawal from them, and if they give me any troubles, I will never trade with them again, 100%. Because we put some work in to get to this point. Please. Right now, my trading plan is to look for real high probable setups instead of just trying to get into the market and see what happens. I'm eyeing the open here for NQ 725 and NQ 800. And if we break down below 700 and test like 75s or 50s and pop back up to 700, I'm going to take that short. So that's the only things that I'm going to be looking to do. Because I don't want to just get into a trade and lose 180 when I'm already up 300 today. It's kind of stupid. So I had a trade last night, a little $100 for the Asian session. That was tough, man. You know how that shit goes. You gotta sit there. I'm trying to watch a movie. I was trying to watch a movie with wifey and my daughter, but I got the mobile book map on my phone, so I can't see how much my positions are actually up or not. But I have to like calculate where the stops are. It was tough. I was like, damn, was it worth the $100?
By iceberg
I watched it.
NQ.
I forgot what the name of it was, but that shit was good. Little family time. I really like selling these 700s right now. We got minus 2,500 on the CBD.
Sell iceberg ES.
Accumulated like 1,500 contracts to the short side from since I've been awake.
Sell iceberg ES.
And I got up at like 536. So I feel like they're.
Sell stop CL. Buy stop NQ. Buy iceberg NQ. Sell stop NQ.
Yeah. is all stacked up on
Buy
712 and
iceberg and
725, so that's the median right there. I'm afraid to go short, like I said, but I really want to go short. I wanted to be short before the market opened, but I misread the news. I thought there was a high impact, but it was a high impact, but it was for Canada, so I had started taking risk off and shit. I really didn't need to do that, but they were all in profit. One was at kind of like break even. So I wish I just had kept that one open, so I could have had some, had some skin in the game when this market opened up. Now I just gotta watch, because Apex will deny you if you try to slim down on the contracts that you trade just to get a withdrawal. So there's no, if I put in one contract, they'll be like, we see that you just added only one micro contract here when you're usually trading between 3 to 9. So hold on one second, I'll be right back.
Sell iceberg and Q.
My wife's dealing with these fucking, yeah, maybe. These government doctors, they keep giving her the runaround to schedule my daughter's appointment. She keeps trying to reschedule it and they won't. We asked to speak to a supervisor twice and they still haven't did that either. It's like, I told my wife, let's just go down in the federal building, call right in front of the window so the people at the window can see that.
Sell iceberg ES.
So we got like $500, not $500,
Sell
probably like at least
iceberg
$200
ES. Sell
invested in
stop
Ubers
and Q.
for
Buy
all the
stop
appointments she's
gold.
been doing.
YM5. Buy trend. Buy start and Q.
I in the 25s here.
Buy iceberg ES. Buy iceberg ES.
See how it reacts off it.
Buy iceberg CL.
We knew it was going to 25. There's the 25s.
Sell iceberg YM. Sell stop YM. Sell iceberg YM. Sell iceberg YM.
Stacking a little bit of bids above on 37s. Offers. So juicy up here at the top. I want to sell so bad, but I'm not. Hold on, my waist back off.
Sell iceberg YM. Sell stop YM. Buy stop and Q. Sell iceberg CL. Buy stop YM. Sell stop CL. Sell stop and Q. Sell stop YM. Buy stop and Q. Buy iceberg and Q. Buy iceberg ES. Sell stop CL. Sell iceberg CL. Buy iceberg CL. Buy stop and Q. Buy
Come in
stop
here with
and
me.
queue.
Holy shit. The fuck out. Come in here, babe. You gotta be on the phone.
Sell iceberg ES.
I got a business call here. I take care.
Mute.
I'm muting it now.
Sell stop YM. Buy stop and queue. Buy stop ES. Sell iceberg and queue. Sell iceberg YM. Sell iceberg YM. Sell stop YM. Sell iceberg and queue. Buy stop and queue. Sell stop and queue. Buy stop YM. Buy iceberg ES. Buy stop ES. Sell iceberg and queue. Sell iceberg YM. Sell iceberg and queue. Buy iceberg ES. Sell iceberg and queue. Buy stop YM. Sell iceberg and queue. Buy stop and queue. Sell stop and queue. Sell stop and queue. by Iceberg CL. By Stop YM. Sell Stop Gold. By Stop YM. Sell Stop NQ.
We get a break below 60. I'm probably going to take my stop and move it closer so I don't be risking as much. This looks bad. 85s. I think it's 87. Hard stop in here. 90. 90. Let's put a stop in at 90. Oof, we don't even have a chance. They don't like being held accountable. They hated that phone call. You seen her? You seen her? Like, like you gonna give me a day? Ain't no good without no name. All right, we're stopped out. Damn. I should have waited for more rejection. That was a waste of $100. That was a smooth waste of $100. Let me drill that. Damn, we should have kept original stop. You get fucked. That's okay, we're not doing shit else now.
No, we did not.
Cell stop Wyatt.
What happened?
Okay.
Who's that?
Christine. Christine said we can't.
We can't get the records?
No.
Oh, okay. It's fine. I probably should have just held over the 800 stuff. Yeah. Oh, now the fucking offers are stacking up on 85s. They ain't gonna get me twice. I'm gonna look like a fucking idiot.
By stop Wyatt.
Damn, I got top ticked out. You could have that shit.
By stop and Q. By iceberg and Q.
Really struggling up here, man. Yeah, it's just about.
By iceberg gold.
It keeps gaining contracts, so I mean, I would assume that this is gonna go up unless they just dump. I mean, there's still negative float, minus 600. But we were minus 2,500 Or market stop.
Sell stop and Q.
Yeah. Exactly. That's why I'm just gonna sit on my hands already. I probably shouldn't even have took that one short, but I said if it goes below the 75, I'm gonna try to sell it as it pops back up, and it did. Now it's holding. Looks like we got stopped up by 2 or 3 points. We didn't need to do. Over managing the trade fucked me on that one. Market just chilling out, waiting for that shit to come out. That's what it looks like. I don't even know what it is. I thought it was some kind of like he was being interviewed by somebody. I'm not sure if it was like the actual thing that usually comes out. As soon as he says the word interest rate, the market's gonna go nuts. Damn, I literally did get top ticked by 8 ticks. It's got a lot of room to pull back too in that breakout in the open. Price surrounded by 2 cranberries, one at 800, one at 750. We will not leave this range. So they say so. We are squeezed right together. Back up and test it. So yeah, I would have been holding
Buy stop
lots
and
of right now.
Q.
Glad I did get it.
Sell
It
stop
was
and Q.
805. That's where I wanted to sit at. Stopped out with just lost an extra 40 bucks, 50 bucks. Yeah, I'm watching the book. I'm just gonna see where they clear it out. And they clear that. They usually clear the books, and then the price can move so easily because there's nothing to stop it. ChatGPT likes to sell when these sweeps just occurred. We got 550, 935 stops just swept on that move up. They like to sell here. The CBD almost positive for the day after shedding 2,500. That's a big turnaround. So
Sell stop and Q.
mm-hmm. Hard telling that no. I already made my big loss. I did not need to lose that 100, but I could have sat on my hands and waited. It never went lower either for my trigger. Like I said, when it goes below 65, I was going to get in. It went to 62 once and then never validated that trade again. In between the ticks, huh? In between the sheets, in between the ticks. Give me 1 second. What about it? You got that? Oh, stop that video.
Sell stop and queue.
I forgot. I didn't know if you could leave it open.
By Iceberg CL.
We need to go back down to design it and tell them what she said. They might not, that's what they really did. Or call and say, ask them if they canceled that thing or something. Either that or just plan on
By
starting
stop
over. Wait,
Wyatt.
right? Oh, sweeps.
Sell stop and queue. By Iceberg ES.
Wonder what they guys talked about. Take his power. And
Sell stop and queue.
He was 800. That would already been take profit one. Oh, he's testified before the Senate committee in 4 minutes on monetary policy. Damn, that was such a clean trade, selling at 800 and then boom, take profit one hit. Yeah, we'll go to appetite and see what they say. Or call motherfucker something over there and see what they say. I would just say after the smoke on that. And then if they say no, then we can call back. Then we can make sure. I wonder what things this guy is allowed to like own and trade since he's the one that pretty much sets the tone to make everything move. Right. That's crazy, but yeah.
Sell Iceberg
Exactly.
Wyatt.
Use my speech tone today. Just fucking move everything.
Sell Iceberg Gold.
Were you long or short? What was your strike? Where'd you get in? Oh, you're on MES. I forgot.
GCJ5. Sell trend 1 started. By stop YM. By stop YM.
Yeah, you gotta read the take profit rules in order to find out. I can find out right quick. I'm not doing nothing. I don't got no risk on it. Oh, you already looked it up? Most places say like, oh, you can't do it before, 5 minutes before like execute, but if you have a trade on, you can.
By stop gold.
Positions must be closed. Dang, that's AIDS. But I mean, my strategy isn't based around that. But I'm rarely holding positions when news is. I'm usually deleveraging before the news gets released. But some people like, they like that 'cause that's when you get the biggest moves. But take profit, I don't want no part of that shit. That would I can. Yeah, I got the
By Iceberg ES.
I got the thing open. The news.
By Stop Gold.
CNBC. It just says waiting for CNBC television. Man, 800 short. Say it again. Sometimes you just gotta sit on your hands. I mean, it's just that's
By
just
Stop
what it is.
ES. By Stop NQ. Sell Stop NQ. Sell Stop
Motherfucking chat.
NQH5. Sell Stop Sell Trend 1 started. By Stop NQ. Sell Stop NQ. Sell Stop NQ. By Stop ES. By Stop YM.
Holy fucking
By
shit.
Stage 5. By Trend 1 started. By
He's not
Stop
even talking,
NQ.
but he's talking.
By
Somebody,
Stop
somebody
ES.
is.
By Stop YM. Sell Stop ES. Sell Stop NQ. Sell Stop ES. Sell Stop YM.
What, you
Sell
closed it
Stop
premature?
Gold.
Now the move is really to the short. Oh my goodness. It's so juicy. Like that shit is crazy. So many sweep shits up at the top of the 37s and shit. It even swept shit. We must have had a limited. We gotta trade with brackets. Gotta use those brackets when you trade, so this way you don't have to manually put your stop in loss. Do you trade with brackets or do you trade like put your stops up and stuff like that?
By Iceberg CL.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you because I only trade with brackets. And you end up floating a lot of orders if you trade with yeah. Trade play is supposed to be flawless though. It doesn't have. I never heard anything about X.
Sell Iceberg ES.
Your ATS shouldn't be turned off. Your ATS should be turned on, and you should be trading with brackets. This way, even if you leave an order up for days, that shit still sits there. Even if you did it a week ago, you might not even notice the price. But yeah, that's my advice. Because this way, when your stop gets hit, or if your target gets hit, it wipes the entire trade, so you don't have to worry about that part anymore. I can't even fucking hear this guy speak. He's not saying shit.
Country. Without question, the Federal Reserve serves a critical role in the function of our government and the global economy.
Oh, there's some black guy.
You have the ability to influence markets and directly impact the financial future of hundreds of millions of Americans. That is why the Federal Reserve is supposed to be an independent institution free from politics. But in recent reality, the Fed has been susceptible to political pressure. Take, for example, the Fed's involvement in the Network for Greening the Financial System, a group dedicated to green financing and climate change, which the Fed joined in December 2020 as President Biden was about to assume
By Iceberg
office.
ES.
Just last month, the Fed announced that it had pulled out of the organization as President Trump was getting ready to be sworn in. To the American people, this is flip-flopping in the political wind.
Sell
Too
Stop
much
Gold.
focus on climate change instead of supervision is consequential. And in March, just 2 years ago, we saw the failure of Silicon Valley Bank. SVB marked the third largest bank failure in U.S. history and the largest since the 2008
Sell
financial
Iceberg
crisis.
CL.
And yet not a single
Sell
federal
Stop CL.
regulator was held to account. In fact, the FDIC filed a lawsuit against bank executives which accused the SVB of egregious
Sell
mismanagement.
Iceberg ES.
And I agree. How
Sell
is
Iceberg
it that
NQ.
no bank
Sell Iceberg
supervisor
ES.
has
Sell
faced
Stop YM.
any consequences? With 30 MRAs and MRIAs that never had
YM
timely
Stop
action
NQ.
to
Sell
SVB,
Iceberg ES.
how can the people who are supposed to be our cops on the beat have not faced any recourse for such egregious failures? I simply don't understand. We must all address the fact that over the last 4 years, the Biden administration and Bidenomics have devastated, decimated, and destroyed hardworking families' ability to support themselves. During Joe Biden's time in office, overall prices rose by over 20%. Energy prices, 34%. Transportation costs,
Iceberg ES.
31%. Groceries, 22%. But that's not all. Thanks to Bidenomics, 2/3 of
Sell iceberg
Americans
CL.
have less than $1,000 in their savings accounts. But there is good news. Things are going to get better. During his first term, President Trump kept his promises to the American
Sell
people.
stock
In the
YM.
first 3 years of his presidency, President Trump built the most inclusive economy ever. 7 million jobs created, and 2/3 went to women, African Americans, and Hispanics. It's time to once again make America's economy work for the folks working paycheck to paycheck. Joe Biden broke our
Buy iceberg
economy,
ES.
and Donald Trump will fix it. For too long, bank
Buy
regulators
iceberg ES.
have followed
Buy
a black
iceberg
box
ES.
regulatory
Buy
framework
iceberg ES.
with little
Sell
to
iceberg
no
CL.
recourse.
Sell
The
iceberg CL.
FDIC, under President Trump's leadership, recently released never-before-seen
Buy stock
supervisory
YM.
documents which confirmed that Biden's Operation Choke Point 2.0 was real, despite assurances that these unacceptable practices would end following the Democrats' first Operation Choke Point
Buy stock
1.0.
gold. Sell
We are
iceberg
seeing
ES.
an unfair playing field that results in disastrous consequences for legal businesses and law-abiding citizens.
Buy iceberg
On one
ES.
hand, if you were in the private sector and you do your
Hella been
job
stacking up that
poorly,
$7 to be honest.
you would face consequences, reprimands,
Sell
suspensions,
iceberg ES.
or even being
Buy
fired.
iceberg ES.
But if you are
Sell
within the
iceberg
walls
CL.
of the federal government,
Sell
such as a
iceberg
bank
CL.
regulator,
Sell
you will
iceberg
face
ES.
no
Sell iceberg ES.
consequences for your actions. Even if you pressure a bank to cut off services to digital asset
Sell
firms, political
iceberg CL.
figures, and conservative aligned businesses and individuals. To
Buy
me,
iceberg
that
ES.
goes against the principles of fairness and market access. Over the last 2 years, as the ranking member of this committee, I have consistently argued that Basel III endgame proposal will raise costs and limit credit access for hardworking Americans. And while I'm glad this proposal was not finalized, the uncertainty surrounding Basel III forced banks to put capital on the sidelines,
Buy
limiting
iceberg
access to that capital for local small businesses across our country. Now, as chairman, I plan to work to rectify the issues of the Biden administration. Chairman Powell, I look forward to hearing from you on the Federal Reserve's future and the plans that you have for right-sizing the financial regulatory framework, specifically around Basel III. To create jobs here in America, we need to make sure there's capital and liquidity in the market. And we also want all Americans,
Sell iceberg
even
CL.
those growing up in poverty like
Buy
I did,
iceberg ES.
to know that they can access the capital necessary to start new businesses, grow
Buy
existing
iceberg NQ.
businesses,
Sell
buy a
stock
home,
NQ.
and pursue
Buy iceberg
their
ES.
American dream. Chairman, I look forward to your comments and your testimony. I will simply say
Buy
that I
iceberg
believe
ES.
that
Buy
weaponizing
iceberg ES.
an independent agency like the Fed for liberal positions, from debanking crypto, bank stress tests, and the green
Sell
financing
iceberg CL.
scheme is not calling balls and strikes as a fair referee. And I
Sell
hope
iceberg
that
CL.
we are getting ready to clean that slate,
Sell iceberg
start
ES.
afresh, and
Sell
focus
iceberg
on a
ES.
healthy economy.
Buy
Ranking
stock
Member
YM.
Wall.
They can't
Thank you,
pop up
Mr.
this
Chairman.
75 robots.
Chair Powell, it is no secret that you and I disagree on the need for strong bank regulation, on monetary policy, and on the Fed's stock trading scandals. We have sharp differences, but I believe you are a principled public servant who cares about this country. We are at an unprecedented moment. Our financial systems are facing huge risks from the economic chaos of President Trump and his co-president, Elon Musk. From on-again, off-again tariffs to on-again, off-again layoffs for tens of thousands of government workers, to on-again,
stop
off-again
gold.
cuts
By
in
stop
domestic
wild.
grain
By stop
purchases,
ES.
to on-again, off-again support for medical research. Now, co-president Musk and his OMB director have frozen all work at the Consumer Financial Protection
By
Bureau.
iceberg ES.
There are now 0 cops
GC
overseeing
by
the
trend 1
$18
started.
trillion consumer lending market.
By
0
iceberg
cops.
CL.
Investigations into illegal foreclosures and auto repossessions
By stop ES.
canceled. Exams of giant credit card issuers to
Sells
weed
top
out
gold.
unlawful junk fees canceled. Probes of illegal debt collection practices
Sell
canceled.
iceberg ES.
Rules to save people billions of dollars canceled. If
Sell
Musk
iceberg
and his
ES.
OMB director succeed in killing the CFPB, it's like putting a sign on every checking
Sell
account,
stock
every
wild.
credit card,
Sell
every
iceberg
mortgage
ES. By
application,
iceberg
and
ES.
every car loan. Cops have been fired. Let the scams begin. That is not all. Musk and his Doge crew are also rooting through the Treasury's most important payment systems, the financial plumbing that ensures that billions of payments go through, from Social Security checks to grants for community health centers. No one has verified how they got this access or what they are doing with it. No one has checked whether Americans' financial data has been copied or sold for the personal profit of Mr. Musk. Instead, we've had a series of misleading and conflicting
stop and
statements by Treasury Secretary Bessent. After receiving public blowback, it appears that Secretary Bessent is now trying to throw the Federal Reserve under the bus. Secretary Bessent claims that Doge can't meddle with the Treasury's payment systems because ultimately the Fed is in control. Now, I'm not sure whether Secretary Bessent doesn't understand how the system works or if he's just trying to shift the blame to you. But I know he is wrong. The Fed simply executes the transactions that Treasury instructs. If Elon and his hackers, for example, initiate instructions to choke off payments to their enemies, or if they issue instructions to shut down payment for teachers' aides for kids with special needs, the Fed may have no way of knowing that the instructions were manipulated, and the Fed may have no legal method to override them. Chair Powell, the next 18 months may define your legacy and the country's trust in the Fed as an institution. I expect that you will work with Democrats and Republicans in Congress if Doge's next move is to try to commandeer the Fed's payment system. I also expect that you will not join the conspiracy to shutter the CFPB. Unlike the Treasury payment instructions, you can see if the CFPB's funding requests have been manipulated. I understand that some extremists have a different view about what the law ought to be, but under the law right now, impoundment is clearly illegal. Do not make the Federal Reserve an accomplice to this illegal act and forever sully the reputation of the Fed. Keep the CFPB funded exactly as the law requires. We are in the middle of a crisis as Elon Musk tries to take over our government. But let's also talk for just a minute about your day-to-day job, meeting the Fed's dual mandate of promoting maximum employment and stable prices. It's now clear that the Fed acted too late and let inflation get too high, and then responded by keeping rates too high for too long. These policies made the big drivers of inflation, like housing costs, even worse. And they put Americans' jobs at risk, making it more difficult for them to afford a home and for small businesses to be able to finance their operations. I urge you to move more rapidly to bring down interest rates, beginning with a meaningful rate cut next month. You have proven you can move quickly when it is politically expedient. After President Trump was elected, within the space of just a few weeks, You scrubbed seemingly all mention of
Sell
diversity and
iceberg CL.
inclusion from the Fed's website. You withdrew from an international central bank group that shares information on climate-related risks to the financial system. You instituted a hiring freeze that will limit the number of cops on the Wall Street beat, and you announced plans to gut big bank stress tests. I can see the immediate political appeal of your strategy, but ultimately it will fail. You will lose good people. Climate catastrophes will continue to mount, and the increasing vulnerability of big banks will threaten our entire economy. Sure, Donald Trump may be happier with you right now, but wading deeper into politics to please him over the long run will burn the reputation and the independence of the Fed and put our entire economy at risk. I urge you, don't fall into these traps. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am. Today we'll hear from the Chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, on the semi-annual monetary
It's
policy
like
report
I'm
in
supposed
Congress.
to hold up to
Chair
like
Powell, thank you for your
8:25,
testimony today,
then I hit
and you are
next
now
pause,
recognized.
and that's
Chairman
exactly
Scott, Ranking Member
Sell
Warren,
iceberg
and
CL.
other members of the committee, I appreciate the opportunity to present the Federal Reserve's semi-annual monetary policy report. The Federal Reserve remains squarely focused on achieving our dual mandate goals of maximum employment and stable prices for the benefit of the American people. The economy is strong overall and has made significant progress toward our goals over the past 2 years.
somebody put in the chat. What's all this corruption and rot is
From
in the
a
food
formerly
prices drop.
overheated state and remain solid.
That's how I was taking it too.
Inflation
Like
has
that. This
moved
is
much
like
closer to our
politics,
2%
politics,
longer
bud,
run
man. I
goal,
don't give a shit.
though it remains somewhat elevated. We are attentive to the risks
We don't know
on
if Elon
both
Musk is
sides of our
country or not.
mandate.
Just gotta believe him.
I will review the current economic situation before turning to monetary policy. Recent indicators suggest that economic activity has continued to expand at a solid pace. GDP rose 2.5% in 2024, bolstered by resilient consumer spending. Investment in equipment and intangibles appears to have declined in the fourth quarter, but was solid for the year overall. Following weakness in the middle of last year, activity in the housing sector seems to have stabilized. In the labor market, conditions remain solid and appear to have stabilized. Payroll job gains averaged 189,000 per month over the past 4 months. Following earlier increases, the unemployment rate has been steady now since the middle of last year, and at 4% in January remains low. Nominal wage growth has eased over the past year, and the jobs to workers gap has narrowed. Overall, a wide set of indicators suggests that conditions in the labor market are broadly in balance. The labor market is not a source of significant inflationary pressures. The strong labor market conditions in recent years have helped narrow long-standing disparities in employment and earnings across demographic groups. Inflation has eased significantly over the past 2 years, but remains somewhat elevated relative to our 2% longer-term goal.
By Stop Wyatt.
PCE prices rose 2.6% over the 12 months ending in December, and excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 2.8%. Longer-term inflation expectations appear to remain well anchored, as reflected in a broad range of surveys of households, businesses, and forecasters, as well as measures from financial markets. Our monetary policy actions are guided by our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. Since last September, the FOMC lowered the policy rate by a full percentage point from its peak, after having made
Great ideas can come from anywhere. With Wix, you decide where they
months. That recalibration of our policy stance was appropriate in light of progress on inflation and the cooling in the labor market. Meanwhile, we've continued to reduce our securities holdings. With our policy stance now significantly less restrictive than it had been, and the economy remaining strong, we do not need to be in a hurry to adjust our policy stance. We know that reducing policy restraint too fast or too much could hinder progress on inflation. At the same time, reducing policy restraint too slowly or too little could unduly weaken economic activity and employment. In considering the extent and timing of additional adjustments to the target rates for the federal funds rate, the FOMC will assess incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. As the economy evolves, we will adjust our policy stance in a manner that best promotes maximum employment and price stability goals. If the economy remains strong and inflation does not continue to move sustainably toward 2%, we can maintain policy restraint for longer. If the labor market were to weaken unexpectedly or inflation would fall more quickly than anticipated, we can ease policy accordingly. We are attentive to the risks on both sides of our dual mandate, and policy is well positioned to deal with the risks and uncertainties that we face. This year, we are conducting the second periodic review of our monetary policy strategy, tools, and communications, the framework used to pursue our congressionally mandated assigned goals of maximum employment and stable prices. The focus of this review is on the FOMC's statement on long-term goals and monetary policy strategy, which articulates the committee's approach to monetary policy, and on the committee's policy communication tools. The committee's 2% longer-run inflation goal will be retained and will not be a focus of the review. Our review will include outreach and public events involving a wide range of parties, including Fed Listens events around the country and a research conference in May. We will take on board lessons of the past 5 years and adapt our approach where appropriate to best serve the American people to whom we are accountable. We intend to wrap up the review by late summer. Let me conclude by emphasizing that the Fed will do everything we can to achieve our dual mandate goals that Congress has set for monetary policy. We remain committed to supporting maximum employment, bringing inflation sustainably to our 2% goal, and keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Our success in delivering on these goals matters to all Americans. We understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Chairman Powell. Certainly your words and your actions have a global impact. You have the opportunity and responsibility of leading this country in the right direction economically, and I thank you for your commitment to having a conversation with all of us about how you do that well. You and I had a conversation yesterday. Some of it was frustrating, some of it was illuminating, but in the end, my goal is to make sure that the American people, and specifically those working paycheck to paycheck, have more opportunities to succeed, not fewer. You have said that the Fed is not against innovation, and banks are perfectly able to serve crypto customers as long as they understand and can manage the risks. Yet you have admitted that the threshold has been a little higher for banks engaging in crypto activities. Last week, I held a hearing on debanking and once again heard that federal banking agencies, in particular the Fed, use reputational risk as a tool to encourage the debanking of certain legal industries and law-abiding citizens for political reasons not tied to safety and soundness. Debanking is a top priority for this committee, and it certainly is for me, and one that I believe is a bipartisan issue. Will you commit to working with this committee to end debanking, including working with the new Vice Chair of Supervision, once appointed, to revise the Federal Reserve Supervision Manuals to remove reputational risk as a tool to weigh in on political topics?
I'm happy to make that commitment.
Thank you, sir. Accountability is very important. I would like to think accountability is a priority for everyone, especially the Fed, given that failures in Fed supervision can result in the loss of billions of dollars. Yet following the failure of the Silicon Valley Bank, which was in part due to the failures of its regulators to identify egregious mismanagement of interest rate and liquidity risks, we have yet to see any regulators be held accountable. And as you recall, that was a point of my frustration. As a guy who spent a lot of time in the private sector, 15 years running a few businesses, I can tell you that accountability is a necessary part of making the entire organization healthier and perform its job as well as possible. I'm encouraged that the FDIC has begun the process of holding SVB executives accountable. That's good news. But no Fed employee has been fired, put on probation, put on performance improvement plan, all of which would be expected in the private sector, as I just mentioned, for employee failure. Please explain to me why Fed employees are held to a different standard from my perspective than everyone else, and what are you planning to do to take accountability for Fed failures in supervision?
So we've actually done quite a lot in response to the events associated with Silicon Valley Bank. So we've done many things. In terms of specific accountability, what we found was this was not a case of malfeasance or nonfeasance so
Somebody's
much.
creating
It was
a
a case
rock
of
firm in that
people were
political chat. He said full pouring
carrying out a
anger.
specific playbook that failed to cause us to act in time for these things. So it wasn't actually particularly fair to the employees to say you violated our practices in some way. That wasn't really what happened. What happened was, I would say, a lot of focus on process and on governance and controls, and
that
not enough focus
815, bro,
on
that shit's solid.
basic bread and butter banking, credit risk, liquidity risk, interest rate risk, things like that. So, as we discussed yesterday, we took very substantial steps to avoid further spread of those issues, and that was successful. But I understand your point on accountability.
This is one of the areas where you see the approach to looking at safety and soundness, and with the number of MRAs that went really documented but no action was taken, and that leads me to the conclusion that individual employees, supervisors, should have been held accountable for that. I'll move on.
Oh, let's wait for that vision.
Regulations so that we ensure banks of different sizes thrive and to preserve our diverse banking system. Will you commit to working with me as chairman to make sure that financial regulations do not impose more burden than is necessary? I'll say that this comes after a number of conversations with community banks and regional banks that have continued to stress that the cost of the regulatory framework around them isn't just harsh.
It's already 10:30, bro.
Larger banks suggest that the cost per employee for the regulatory framework is $10,000 per employee. I think we can do better.
Trying to put
What are
in
your
grades
thoughts
at
on that?
10:30, 11 o'clock. That shit.
Right, first of all, I will commit to working with you on that. We do try to avoid excessive burden. I think it's fair to take a fresh look frankly, on debanking. I think we all see,
APEC didn't have that
both
stupid
on
rule,
your
don't trade
hearing and
smaller.
on the House side, we hear a lot of people talking about that. And, it's time to take a fresh look, I think. We don't intentionally do these things, but sometimes regulation leads things to happen, and we need to be working on that.
I appreciate that, and I'll turn over to the ranking member. I'll say this, after having a number of conversations with CEOs of banks around the country, one of the things that was made clear to me with specific statement from these CEOs is that the regulatory OCC and other regulatory agencies said specifically to debank certain industries, and that is the point that I'm making, and one that I think we have to solve. If it's legal in America to do business, we should do our part to make sure that they're banked.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So over the weekend, Co-President Musk and Acting Director Vogt effectively shut down CFPB. No more cop on the beat looking out for a family of four in South Carolina facing an illegal foreclosure. No more cop on the beat looking out for your grandma whose bank account has just been taken over by a scammer. No more cop on the beat looking out for people getting ripped off by giant credit card companies that are charging illegal junk fees. It also means that the CFPB is no longer doing one of its most important jobs, examining big banks to root out illegal conduct before it happens, or at least stop it before more people get hurt. Chair Powell, if the CFPB isn't on the job right now, then who is administering JP Morgan or Wells Fargo's consumer compliance exams to ensure that they are following the law?
Senator, I believe that, and you would know, that Dodd-Frank moved all authority for examinations in the consumer space to the CFPB. We still have some jurisdiction.
We'll talk about that in a sec. But the answer to my question, please. If the CFPB is not there examining these giant banks to make sure they are following the laws on not cheating consumers, who is doing that job?
I can say no other federal regulator.
No one, in other words.
Yes.
So, thanks to co-president Musk and CFPB acting director Vogt, Wall Street banks no longer have to show the bank examiners that they're not illegally opening accounts people didn't ask for, like happened with Wells Fargo, or charging illegal junk fees like the Bank of America did. But CFPB has jurisdiction only on banks that have more than $10 billion in assets. So what's happening in thousands of community banks all around the country, those that have less than $10 billion in assets? So Chair Powell, as you know, the Fed oversees consumer compliance for state member banks that have less than $10 billion in assets. Has the Fed suspended consumer compliance exams for those smaller banks? Or is the Fed still on the job to make sure that those smaller banks are following consumer financial laws?
Still on the job, business as usual.
All right. By forcing the CFPB not to do its job, President Trump, Elon Musk, and the author of Project 2025, Russ Vought, are giving Wall Street banks an unlimited get-out-of-jail-free card so they can cheat working families, even while community banks continue to play by the rules. You know, for any Americans who have money deposited at JP Morgan or Wells Fargo or any other of the giant banks, they should now know that there is no one on the job to make sure that those banks are not scamming you. Only the smaller banks now have a cop on the beat to make sure that they aren't cheating consumers. You know, if I have my money in one of those giant banks, I might think about going to a smaller bank where the protection, at least right now, is a whole lot better. Now, at the same time that the CFPB is under attack, the Fed is buckling to pressure from Wall Street to erase other safeguards for the too-big-to-fail banks. During the first Trump administration, under your leadership, the Fed weakened the big bank stress tests, including by giving the big banks some of the answers to the test in advance. I called you out on it, but you promised right here in this committee that you would not give those banks the whole answer key. I'm going to quote you back. You said, complete knowledge of the models could lead to a model monoculture in which all firms have similar internal stress testing models, which could increase the correlation of risk in the system and miss key idiosyncratic risks faced by the firms. I agreed with you. But several weeks ago, the Fed announced that it has plans to do exactly that, hand all of the answers over to the giant banks. Chair Powell, why is the Fed about to propose a rule that directly contradicts your own testimony and, in your own words, would render the stress tests toothless?
Senator, in essence, because the ground has shifted very substantially in administrative law, and we actually want the stress test to remain resilient to that, and so we're making changes to accomplish that.
The changes are changes you've identified earlier as making those tests toothless. Look, the big banks are going to juice shareholder payouts and leave this economy more vulnerable to a crash. The Fed is knuckling under to bank lobbyists. We know how this ends. People will suffer. Wall Street will get bailed out. I urge you, Chair Powell, to serve Main Street instead of Wall Street. Don't weaken these rules.
Thank you. Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for coming before the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. I've got a series of questions, but I would like to give you an opportunity, if you would like. The suggestion that the ranking member has made here is that the big banks can now scam individuals right now. Any change in the laws regarding how they're supposed to be treating the individual consumers out there or anything along that line?
Law changes, no, not aware of any.
Any changes, any rules that they would have to follow?
Not that I'm aware of.
Are they still audited, and do they still have the regulators in watching all of their businesses just as they did before?
Well, they'd have all the regulators except for the CFPB,
Very good.
if in fact, in the hypothetical, the CFPB weren't carrying that out.
Anything else you'd like to add before we move on?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we continue to prioritize the stability and the resilience of our financial system, the ongoing Basel III rulemaking process has remained front and center in shaping our regulatory framework. Now, I guess I was rather outspoken with my opposition to the original proposal, and further work was stalled at the end of the last year. I guess my question for you today, sir, is could you provide an update on the Federal Reserve's progress in finalizing the Basel III endgame rulemaking process?
I'd be glad to. So we remain committed to completing Basel III endgame. We think it's good for U.S. banks, it's good for our economy that there be a global standard beneath which foreign banks can't fall. And that was one of the big ideas behind the whole Basel Committee approach. So where it sits now is we await leadership arriving at the OCC and the FDIC, and that seems to be happening. And when that happens, we're going to sit down with them and work our way through to a Basel III endgame proposal. And I think we can do this reasonably quickly, one that is compliant, consistent with the Basel requirements, and also consistent with what other large jurisdictions are doing. I'm optimistic that we can do that fairly quickly, and we're committed to doing that.
We always wanted our banks to be competitive with European banks. And I'm just curious,
Elliot is
the
the guy that
original
used to
proposal
RP with.
that was in front of you, and I'd like your thoughts on this, it was estimated to increase our bank's capital by 19%, which I think may very well have created a potential disadvantage within the U.S. institutions versus our European counterparts. With any new proposal, what's your thoughts? Would you make a commitment that this would be a neutral approach with regard to capital?
The main commitment I'll make is we'll work together with new leadership at the other banking agencies to do something. But that's certainly, you know, I've said many times in this committee that I think that the level of capital in the largest banks is about right.
Just about completed, but I
And
wanted
so
to do
it'll
some
shake
editing I had
out
burned out,
somewhere
man. The last bit, like
in that
12 hours.
area, I would
Our
guess.
expectation would be, and the markets would expect that it would be neutral with regard to capital.
In that range, but I want to defer to our new colleagues and get their views as well. But that's a good starting place.
Okay, thank you. The Federal Reserve's partnership with the U.S. Treasury plays a central role in supporting our nation's payment infrastructure, which processes a vast range of daily transactions, from federal benefit disbursements to debt obligations. Could you outline the Federal Reserve's role in supporting and managing the Treasury's payment systems, including how the Fed works to keep these systems secure, efficient, and capable of handling the government's high volume of daily transactions?
So it's a complicated set of arrangements, and I'll try to summarize quickly. Effectively, Congress authorized spending, and then the agencies carry out those spending orders. And when the way they do that is they send an order to pay a recipient to the Treasury Department. Upstream, before it gets to the Fed, all of these decisions are made about: is this an appropriate order? Is this payee on the don't pay list, and all those things. Once all of that is set, it comes to the Fed, and by that I mean 4 or so of the reserve banks, and we actually make the payment. We take the money out of the Treasury General account, and we make the payment. We make no judgments whatsoever. Those are all upstream from us, and we are in fact the fiscal agent of the Treasury.
Confirm for me today. Is the system safe today?
I believe it is, and I will tell you, we are very strongly committed to the integrity, efficacy, resilience, and all those things of this system. People do depend on this in a big way, and we're committed to that.
One last question for you, sir. The failure of Silicon Valley Bank, and the chairman brought this up. I'm just curious, recognizing a lot of banks out there looked at this, it cost the other banks in the system a lot of money to pick up the costs involved in the losses. Nobody's been fired, but you did indicate that it was a failure in the playbook. Has the playbook been revised, or can we expect that it will be revised?
In a lot of ways, it's been revised, yes. I can go into some details. One thing that didn't happen was, for example, the supervisors didn't follow through aggressively enough on things that they'd said. If they'd done that could well have been enough to to stop it. But a lot of it was just not focusing enough directly on what was a very large amount of interest rate risk, a large portfolio of long-term securities matched up with an unstable funding base. And somehow people wrote about that, and
Sell
the
stop
Fed and
and
others
Q.
wrote publicly about this, but somehow we don't expect bank runs outside of a crisis in this country, and that's what that was. It was a bank run, and bank runs are incredibly damaging. I think everyone learned a lot from that and is determined to do better.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is one that I think, as you appropriately pointed out, I think this is an area where a lot more questions are out there yet. And I think if it's the playbook that was the problem, I think perhaps a discussion about how that playbook has been revised would be appropriate in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
Vice Top Y.
Senator Cortez Master.
Sell I stop and Q.
Chairman Powell, thank you, and thank you
Make a leg
always
up.
for the conversations in between these hearings as well. Let me focus on a couple of things of concern,
So
and
I
you
Every time I
touched
look
on
at
a little
my
bit of
short
this, and I
train,
think
like, oh, I could have
this
got
is important to
one there,
clarify.
and then it comes back
There
up.
was a change in the law when the CFPB
Touches
was
my stop, so I
created.
got one out,
The
and then two breaks.
Vice
CFPB
Top and Q.
examines the banks
That
and
got me 40 bucks
enforces
last
the
time.
law, whereas
So
the Fed
I
only
CL.
supervises those banks. Is that correct?
Vice Top CL.
Or how
So
would you
I CL.
how would you determine that relationship?
With the CFPB, so Dodd-Frank took a lot of the consumer
So I
compliance
switch
jurisdiction
into
away from the
Vice
other
Top
banking
ES.
agencies and gave it to a newly created agency, the CFPB.
It's pretty
We
much just,
retained a
what is it, the
residual
algorithm
amount
just
of
keeping
that,
prices
as
to
we
hang
just
out for a
discussed,
bit and not
which
making
was
people sue for
banks
maintaining
under
it.
10 billion in assets. But the CFPB essentially took all of that when Dodd-Frank came into being.
So as it was created, when you two were working together, the Federal Reserve collaborated with the Consumer Bureau when supervising those large banks, correct?
Yes, we still retain supervision over all the holding companies and also of Fed member banks.
And let me ask you this then, does the Federal Reserve enforce consumer protection laws now for things like money transmitters?
Not for money.
That would be the consumer
Vice
protection, that would be
President.
CFPB.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
And
right.
so when we're talking about
I love how she asks
collaborating with
questions that she knows the answers
CFPB
to. Like, you're sitting up
for
in that
financial
fucking chair about
technology
40 feet
firms,
high.
what
As
would
the
the
structure
Fed
of
Reserve
the
now do
puppet
that if the
shit out, you
CFPB,
know,
if the hypothetical is the CFPB no longer
Oh,
exists,
shit.
what
I
would
guess
be the
that's what
Fed's
leads
role
up to
right
the
now
other
with
one.
respect to technology firms?
We don't have jurisdiction over, we have jurisdiction over banks and some
And that's
financial
it.
market utilities.
So let me
Yeah.
ask you this, because I know there's a number of Nevadans who file consumer reports of concerns about fraud and predators with the CFPB. The Fed Reserve doesn't receive those reports, correct?
No, I don't believe
And
so.
you have no role when it comes to consumer protection like the CFPB does, correct?
Unless you're a Fed member bank that has 10 billion or
Somebody said in the
less
chat,
in
bro,
assets,
it's
then we
impacting the
have
market with a
jurisdiction.
staggering.
So there is a gap. If the hypothetical is true, what we're hearing that the CFPB is being shut down, there is a gap, what we're hearing in enforcement out there, and particularly when it comes to consumer protection. Is that, would you say that's true?
Yes, for all banks that we don't
Yeah.
supervise.
And I think that's the concern we're all having right now, is this concern of when we're looking to streamline government. And listen, I'll be the first to tell you, there's a lot of bloat. We need to streamline it. We need to address regulations and overreach. But there's a strategic way to do it, and not this burn down the house that is going to harm people. Enforcement around consumer protection law. So that's what you're hearing from many of us on our side.
When I get that book back, I was thinking about starting up one of those
We do have some residual enforcement authorities, but we don't have the
VPS
examination
and
authority. And
streaming out how people be streaming their little versions of Big
Thank
Map
you.
in their setup because they be having like
let
50
me
to
ask you
100
this, and,
people minimum.
we
And all
talked about this
advertising
already,
traffic.
and I understand
And you can set up ads in there.
it may
you know,
be difficult to
not ads in there,
answer this, but
you know, YouTube ads, but you could have it.
the
come
Federal
from,
Reserve Board
chat
members have been
box.
clear that
You know,
future
Discord,
interest rate cuts
you
are
know, things
unlikely
like
to
that.
happen
And it
despite
would
the
be,
strong
it
economy.
wouldn't cost you anything, just the money from
and,
the VPS,
um,
which is super cheap.
But there are folks in my
You don't
home
need
that
to
are in my state that are
And,
waiting to buy
that could be one way
oil.
to get traders too.
And we know that's still an
Especially
issue
if you
with
have
the
a pool
high
of
prices right now for home affordability. You add the interest rates to it,
So
it is a
stop
problem.
lying.
So
When I
do
get
you
the
think
map,
it's
the
most
first thing I'm gonna
likely
do
that
is message
interest rates
the,
will remain above
So
6%
staff and
this
tell them,
year?
could I get
Can
the
you
exact
even
template that you
address
guys
that?
use to,
You know,
that I've
so
been watching
overall the economy
free
is is strong, growing 2.5% last year. The labor market is also very solid. Unemployment at 4%.
Yeah, they be having that shit.
Inflation last year was 2.6% for the year. So we're in a pretty good place with this economy. We want to make more progress on inflation, and we think our policy rate is in a good place, and we don't see any reason to be in a hurry to reduce it further. As it relates to housing, so it's true that mortgage rates have remained high, but that's not so directly related to the Fed's rate. It's really related more to long-term bond rates, particularly the Treasury, the 10-year Treasury, 30-year Treasury, for example. And those are high for reasons not particularly closely related to Fed policy. They may remain high. I think, once we lower rates and kind of rates return to a lower level, mortgage rates will come down. I don't know when that'll happen. And even when it does happen, we're still going to have a housing shortage in many places.
Thank you. Chairman Powell, thank you again for being here.
Vice Top NQ.
Thank you, ma'am. Next will be Senator Kennedy.
Cell Iceberg CL. Vice
Thank you,
Top
Mr. Chairman.
NQ.
Thank you, Mr.
Cell
Chairman,
Stop
for being
Ryan.
here.
Vice Top NQ.
My friend, our ranking member, said that you were knuckling under
Cell Iceberg
to
ES.
the big bank
Vice Top ES.
lobbyists. Is that true?
No.
Damn, I'm wondering, how much
It seems to me that the big picture should not go unnoticed. Do you recall
By Iceberg
a year or
CL.
two ago when inflation was raging? I think its peak was about 9%.
It's probably going to be pretty scary.
Many economists and other
Cell
experts,
Iceberg ES.
based in part on history, said that you were going to have to provoke high unemployment and put our country into
By Iceberg
recession
ES.
in order to get inflation down. Do you recall that?
Very, very well.
118 million.
Are we in a recession?
We are
That's
not.
serious.
By Iceberg NQ.
Would you as an American trade places right now with Germany in terms of the economy? How
No, I sure wouldn't.
I needed to just execute that.
about China?
No, wouldn't trade
That's
places.
insane.
How about France?
No thanks.
Cell Iceberg ES.
Sounds about
Things
right.
aren't perfect. Inflation is obviously still sticky.
Cell
Long
Iceberg
rates are
ES.
too high, which I want to.
They got 4 of
Talk
them
about
that
in
are
a
just for
second.
social services. So
But
that's what they.
The fact
Yeah.
is, knock on
There's only like
wood,
12 on the whole strip. So
we have experienced a soft landing, haven't
I mean,
we?
they are the shit motels. To
Not
be
for me
fair,
to
and they
say,
would never
really.
be full if they didn't have one. So.
I'll let others
Well, have
make
we
the
lovely.
experienced a hard landing?
No, we sure
Are
have.
we in
They
a
don't have to do any
recession?
maintenance or anything. Nobody's complaining.
I call
Nobody's
that a soft
complaining.
landing.
It's supposed to be. As long as that bitch ain't on fire and the lights is on, they good.
And it seems to me that you
So
and
Iceberg
some
ES.
of the ladies and gentlemen
Vice Top
who
NQ.
are colleagues
Vice
at the
Top
Federal
ES.
Reserve behind you deserve some credit for that.
Thank you.
I don't know why you
Oh, to the people?
don't take the credit.
Yeah.
Everybody else in Washington, D.C. does.
Damage is already done, though.
Again, I'm not saying things are perfect, but I never imagined that our landing
What are you
could
gonna put
be
up?
this soft,
What you gonna do?
albeit not perfect. And I wanted to thank you and your colleagues for that effort. You sure didn't get any help from Congress.
I was a little fan of those
and-
tent cities,
and,
man. I thought about the
and
people that
our president on the fiscal
that actually
side.
weren't
I
bad
don't
people that
expect
lived
you
in
to
that
comment
tent
on that.
that
You and the Federal Reserve can to a large extent control short rates, can't you?
Yes.
Through the Open Market Committee. You can't control long rates, though, can you?
No, we can't.
Why is that?
So a lot of things go into long rates, and one of them is the expected future short rate of Fed policy, but many, many other things go in. Expectations of inflation in the longer run, the sort of risks around the economy and around the budget deficit go into something called the term premium, which is the part we can't explain when we do these decompositions. And so, it's set by supply and demand in the bond market at the long end, and we're not particularly. We have some influence, but mostly not.
Many Americans are looking at short rates and looking at the Fed's behavior and how you reduce inflation, but they don't see they don't see the long rates going down, and obviously that affects mortgage rates. And I would encourage you and your colleagues to spend some time explaining to the American people why that is. Final question.
Yeah.
If you went home tonight,
Yeah.
and
Everybody, this has been going on for 40, 50 years, but
Mayor Powell,
they
your
don't ever talk
spouse,
about that shit. They on.
Sell ice
said, I got a call today from our bank.
I learned a lot of that
They're,
shit from watching this show with my wife.
They're debanking us.
Scandal, it was called, about the
They're
press.
worried
Sell
about
stock
their
and
reputational risk
They did a bit on the voting
because they don't
machine.
like
Sell
our
ice
results.
They were showing you everything.
Sell iceberg, yes.
Would you think that
This shit's crazy.
fair?
No, I sure would. And as I mentioned earlier, I too am troubled by the quantity of these
By
reports.
stock
And,
wire. Sell
I
iceberg,
really want to
yes.
understand better why this is happening. One theory is that banks are just very risk averse around BSA and money laundering, and that's because we're so tough on them, and that they just don't. Any red flag is enough. But it may be that this whole thing with reputation risk needs to be thought about. It's actually coming out of our one manual that we use. We're taking that concept out, the manual that we've been
By
using
iceberg, yes.
for
By
accounting
iceberg, yes.
access for master accounts. We're just going to take that out. But I think this needs a fresh look, and I think it's time for
Imagine being that guy.
Well, I've asked the chairman, and he's agreed to
You must
invite
take the fall and you are
some
promoted
of
to
the
captain.
CEOs of some
You're
of
like,
the
fuck.
banks that have been debanking people.
By
The
iceberg,
CEOs,
yes.
Yes.
not
So,
the
you
law,
gotta go put you somewhere
not the
fucked up
PR
like you're on Tylenol or
consultants,
some shit.
not the priests, them. The CEOs to come in and let's talk about this and find out what the hell's been going on.
That shit would be so bad.
Thank you, Secretary.
That's real. So
Thank you,
all the
Mr.
people that
So agreed.
Thank you, Chairman Scott. Chairman Powell, welcome. Thank you very much. I think your monetary policy combined with the Biden fiscal policy over the last 4 years has
Sell
made a
iceberg,
tremendous
CO.
difference. We've
As they should,
avoided
man.
a
There's
recession.
nothing good coming.
And I'd like to remind people how far we've come. In 2020, the gross domestic product decreased 2.2%. The unemployment rate finished the year at 6.7%. By 2024, gross domestic product grew 2.5%. The unemployment rate was 4.1%. Labor force participation rate went up from 61% to 62.5%. And that's a combination of your work together with the fiscal policy of the Biden administration. So I thank you for that. One of the issues before us today is the issue of tariffs. In July 2018 testimony, you stated, Mr. Chairman, countries that have remained open to trade, that have not erected barriers, including tariffs, have grown faster and had higher incomes. Do you still believe that?
Yes, I do. I would stand by that.
So President Trump's tariffs on China, Canada, and Mexico will obviously raise costs
Sell
for families. In
iceberg,
fact,
yes.
some economists, many economists,
Sell iceberg,
project
yes.
that about
Sell
12
iceberg,
million
yes.
per year
Man, you got
households
SSI yet?
will be paying extra. An increase of inflation by nearly 1%, economic growth depression, and for example, the increase of the average car price by $2,700. Is that a wise policy?
So I guess I ought to say this. I think the
Sell
standard
iceberg,
case
yes.
for
By iceberg,
free
yes.
trade and all that logically still makes
Sell
sense.
iceberg, yes.
It didn't work that well.
By
when
stock
we had
wire.
one very large
Sell
country
iceberg,
that doesn't
yes.
play by the rules. And in any case, it's not the Fed's job to make or comment on tariff policy.
Sell iceberg, yes.
Really, that's for elected people, and it's not for us to comment. Ours is to try to react to it in a thoughtful, sensible way and make monetary policy so that we can achieve our mandate.
Ask him if we've done everything you need
Just
to do.
this weekend, the president removed the board of the Kennedy Center and made himself chairman. What would you do if the president tried to remove a member of the Federal Reserve Board?
They're trying to get some kind of word, unless they say, because if they say, oh no, like if you don't turn in this or get
not
it done by
allowed
this
under
date,
the
then
law.
we have to go to the next step. If they say, okay, well, we don't see, see what they say.
We've communicated back
And we'll
and
react
forth
from there.
about synthetic risk transfer as a potential danger to the banking system. And could you give us some insights on how we can improve financial stability by regulating these transactions?
Oh, your throat's fucked up?
What we've been doing
Alright, well
for
then
some
wait
time
till tomorrow,
now
I guess.
is looking at them on a case-by-case basis. And if they really do transfer risk successfully, then that's okay. I mean, it's a good thing if a bank wants to transfer risk off its balance sheet and in a way that it gets compensated for and all that. But what you want to make sure is that the risk is really transferred, and that was the problem during the global financial crisis. Was sort of things that appeared to but did not accomplish a transfer of risk. So we see this coming, and we've been looking at these transactions on an ongoing basis.
Oh, he used his own money?
What happens typically is the transaction becomes complicated by synthetic risk transfers, as it was the case with synthetic derivatives. Thank you for your attention to that. We've talked about housing. It's absolutely critical everywhere across the country. We're in a housing shortage, of course, while housing is difficult. Two of the mainstays of our housing market are Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, helping to support home ownership. Does the federal guarantee backing Fannie and Freddie help make mortgage rates more affordable and home ownership more accessible, Mr. Chairman?
I imagine it does hold down mortgage rates, the fact that they're sovereign.
And how important is the 30-year mortgage?
I'm sure if they dig a deep dive in the last,
in our housing market, the 30-year mortgages.
And I have heard some discussions about eliminating Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which would be detrimental, I presume, to the housing market.
That's really a question for you. I mean, putting them back in putting housing finance back in the private sector has some appeal over the longer run, but I leave that with you.
Nice to know what things
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Ricketts.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, for holding this important hearing, and thank you, Chairman Powell, for being here today to talk about our economy and all the things that are going on. I want to address, again, something that the Ranking Member started talking off about, which was characterizing the CFPB as being the cop on the beat here. But I can tell you, as having been a governor and having a Department of Banking that reported to me, that if any consumer would contact us and make a complaint about a bank, even a big bank like JP Morgan, we would investigate, as could the OCC, the FDIC, the FTC. So to characterize that nobody's out there looking for consumers, I think, is inaccurate, and we ought not scare consumers right now that somehow this is the case, because if you do have an issue, if you're a consumer, please reach out to your State Department of Banking, because those folks are going to look out for you. I can tell you that because I used to have one of those Department of Banking. They did a fantastic job of looking out for the consumers. One of the things that has also impacted consumers is inflation. Prices under the Biden administration were up 20%. An average household is paying $13,000 more today than they were for the same standard of living they had before Joe Biden got elected. We see that grocery prices, for example, are up 22%, rents up 23%. Simply put, Nebraskans are economically worse off today than they were 4 years ago, and I expect that that's part of the reason why we saw this change in administration. They thought that was not something that they wanted to continue to pursue. They didn't want the same policies being followed. They have to end the reckless federal spending, rein in inflation, and be responsible about how we make decisions to be able to grow the economy. One of those areas that I'm concerned about is the expansion of the Fed balance sheet. The Fed's balance sheet before, at the end of 2019, so before the pandemic, was about $4.1 trillion. By May of 2020, the Fed expanded that to $7 trillion, and by 2022, the Fed's balance sheet hit an all-time record $8.9 trillion. Inflation peaked at 9.1% that year, a high we had not seen since 1981. Now, I'm encouraged by the actions the Fed is taking with quantitative tightening to shrink the balance sheet down to $6.85 trillion, but $6.85 trillion is still too high. And one of my concerns, Mr. Chairman, is that that's kind of one of your tools to be able to guard against the downturn of the economy or some sort of shock. You obviously used it during the pandemic. Looking ahead long term, will the Fed Reserve continue to this course of unwinding the balance sheet?
Yes, so what we said is that we intend to slow and then stop the decline when reserve balances are somewhat above the level that we judge consistent with so-called ample reserves. The most recent data and the feel of the markets is definitely that reserves are still abundant. They're about the level they were at when runoff started, because the runoff has really happened out of the overnight repo facility, reverse repo. So yes, it's an ongoing thing, and we're not yet where we're headed.
So what kind of pace can we expect? And I know that obviously there's going to be a lot of factors that can happen to the economy over the course of next year. But if things were going to go along the way they are today, you've already said the economy's doing well. Inflation's a little higher than we want it to be at 2.6%, but unemployment's at 4%. If these conditions, and I think you used the word stable quite a bit, if these conditions were to remain stable throughout the course of the year, would you have a range to give us of where the balance sheet might be if we were talking again here in January 2026?
We basically we're going to be looking at reserve conditions in reserve markets, and trying to stop a little bit above what we consider ample. And we think we're meaningfully above that now. We can't put a number on it because you can't directly know the demand for reserves other than by observing behavior in the market and then putting a little bit of a buffer on it. So I can't give you an exact number, but for now it's ongoing, and we have a ways to go.
What kind of conditions would have to happen for you to start going back to quantitative easing?
So to quantitative easing. That's a tool we tend to use when we're at the effective lower bound and we can't cut interest rates anymore. So nothing like what you're seeing in the current day. It's a different test for stopping quantitative tightening, but we would use QE going forward only in a situation where rates are at zero, and we're a long way from zero now.
So do you think that, again, just generally speaking then, if things were to remain stable, you'll continue to unwind the balance sheet, to continue the quantitative tightening? Can't give me a range on this? Is that what I hear you saying?
That's right.
Okay, great. Well, I encourage you to keep doing that, because, again, I think that's important to be able to make sure that you've got powder for the next issue that we may face. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you being here.
Senator Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Powell, good to see you. One of the things we've talked about in the past, and I've got 2 or 3 issues I'm going to get through fairly quickly, is that that while our regulatory framework should always promote financial innovation, that innovation can't come at the expense of things like anti-money laundering, consumer protection, financial stability. I continue to worry in many of these hearings where we keep seeing this regulatory creep outside the boundaries of traditional financial regulation. I think if we're starting a system from scratch, a few of us would design it this way. But it is one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to working with Chair Scott and my colleague, Senator Lummis, on a framework looking at stable coins in particular within the regulatory perimeter. I know my friend Bill Haggerty just introduced a bill in this area. I'm looking at trying to make sure we get those guardrails put in place, and how it touches the Fed is something that's terribly important to me. I know you and I have talked in the past about the notional idea of same activity, same regulation in the non-bank sector. If you'd like to wax briefly on this question on stable coins and how we think about them in the same point of, if they are similar to other activities, should they not have the same regulatory structure?
So we definitely support these efforts to create a regulatory framework around stablecoins. Stablecoins may have a big future with consumers and businesses. We can't know that now, but it is important for the development of stablecoins in a safe and sound manner, and a manner that protects consumers and savers and all, that there be a regulatory framework. So we see these bills, and we're in contact as we were in the last Congress, and trying to add our technical thoughts and how to do this. And we think it's a very constructive exercise.
Well, we do think you have a lot of expertise in this session. And there are people come with lots of opinions on everything, from over the top to the other end of the spectrum. And I'm gonna need to rely on your expertise as well as we try to work through some framework for stable coins. I know there are a lot of earlier questions on CFPB. I think the record is pretty darn good. It's returned $20 billion to consumers. Matter of fact, last time we had the previous chair here, Chair Rohit, Mr. Chopra, we were talking about $55 million to Virginia. I do have to mention this more for my colleagues. Tim Kaine and I did a teletown hall last night. Lots of things happening in Virginia. Normally we would get maybe 3,000, 5,000, 6,000 folks on a teletown hall. We had 60,000 last night. I have not seen anything like that in my time up here on the Hill. And a huge amount of concern about what the Doge boys are doing, whether our information is safe, whether privacy is protected. I had one lady say, in light of what's happening at CFPB, and while there's not a direct connection, she's saying is her deposits at her bank safe? We tried to give her assurance, and I said, you know what, ma'am, I'm going to be talking to the chairman of the Federal Reserve tomorrow. And with this diminution or shuttering, at least at the time being, of the CFPB, can I tell, I believe her name was Mary, can I tell Mary from Virginia that her bank account is safe?
I think bank accounts overall across the economy are safe. Yes, we've still got deposit insurance at the FDIC, and the banking system is well capitalized and safe.
Well, again, I think the concern that was being raised was that the diminution of consumer protections lent her concerns about whether that dollar being safe. Last thing I want to recognize is that there's been reports in the media about the thinness in the Treasury markets, the number of additional bonding that we're going to have to do, particularly if so many of these unpaid tax cuts. Matter of fact, one of the things that was really striking to me was that yesterday the president mentioned how he was, quote, examining Treasury debt payments for possible fraud, and suggested that our debt might not be as high as possible. We all understand the full faith and credit of the United States is based upon a reputation. If this president were to suddenly say, I'm wiping off X amount of debt because I don't believe we owe it, what kind of effect would that have on both stability of the dollar and the overstability of our economy?
It will probably not surprise you that I will defer to you on that question.
So you think it would be, from a Fed standpoint, the President of the United States starts to say we're not going to pay our Treasury debt. You're going to have no view at all?
I'm not going to comment on things that the President says.
I would like to see us at some point get a stronger answer on that, because I think that in light of the president's willingness to shut down agencies willy-nilly, his ability to potentially curtail payment of debt, I think would have devastating consequences on our economy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Britt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, there's been a lot of conversation both in and out of this hearing room today. Conversations about a co-president referencing Elon Musk, referencing the work that Doge is doing. I think it's important to remember that President Trump ran on this. I mean, he said we're going to look for wasteful spending across our government. We're $36 trillion in debt goal. That's not only fiscally irresponsible, it is actually morally irresponsible. And the difference in this administration and the last administration is that President Trump is actually the final arbiter. And it's interesting that none of you had anything to say over the last 4 years when it is clear that our commander-in-chief was not in command. And if we're going to use the term co-president, then let's go back and say co-president Jake Sullivan, co-president Ron Klain, co-president Jill Biden. I mean, it seems that some of the biggest decisions were made during the president's afternoon nap time. And so I just think we need to be a little bit more honest about what's been laid out and what's actually occurring. Chair Powell, I want to discuss some monetary policy issues, but I first want to highlight a few supervisory items. We unfortunately started 2023 with several bank failures in which the Fed itself admits its supervisors were, quote, too slow to ask. The question has been asked earlier about who was fired, who was not. I think that there's some real merit to having accountability that we have not seen there. In the aftermath of those failures, the Fed was certainly not slow to act when it came to new regulations. Like the new capital requirements that would have put the U.S. banks at a global disadvantage and actually hurt consumers in my state. The way I look at this is the world came up with a gold standard. And then Vice Chair Barr said, hold my beer. And unfortunately, that hurts Alabamians. In addition to that, we had Community Reinvestment Act and stress testing frameworks that were basically adopted in secret, or as we discussed last week, the reputational risk and just the arbitrary nature of that and those standards that were used to push political agendas. None of this is acceptable, and we've got to take a look at how to promote greater accountability and transparency into the Fed's supervisory function. Shifting gears, as of January 30th, the Federal Reserve had a mark-to-market loss on its balance sheet of roughly $221 billion. In fact, I looked back and the Fed has posted losses since September of 2022. Meanwhile, we've seen transfers to the CFPB totaling $2 billion since September of 2022. So just to clarify, Chair Powell, these money transfers are requested by the CFPB director each quarter and then directly deposited by the Fed. Is that how that works?
So the director of the CFPB requests money, and we, under the law, we send that money. Yes.
So, in fact, but Dodd-Frank actually prohibits the Fed from actually reviewing or amending those requests.
That is correct.
And so it gives full discretion to the CFPB
up to 12% of our. There's a ceiling on that, but that's correct.
So just to level set, how many times has the CFPB funding request been denied by the Fed?
We don't have the authority to deny it under the law.
Zero, right?
Zero.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And by the way, I'd like to applaud the current administration and acting director vote for inserting some accountability back into the agency by pausing these quarterly just blank checks. On that, I know there's been a lot of conversation around the Bureau over the last few days, but I do want to focus on those last couple of years, particularly the $2 billion the CFPB received from September 2022 up to the last receipt on January 2nd, 2025. Congress specified in statute that the Fed shall fund the CFPB through the combined earnings of the Federal Reserve System. However, as I mentioned, the Fed has no current earnings. It has a balance sheet of negative $200 billion. So instead of the recent audit statement saying the Fed is funding the CFPB through assessments on its reserve banks, Mr. Chair, there are only two statutes that authorize the Fed to make reserve bank assessments, and neither permit the CFPB to fund transfers. So what authority exactly did the Federal Reserve have to assess the reserve banks in this manner over the last 2 years? I just wanted kind of a fact-finding.
We looked at that question very carefully, and it's very clear on the law and the legislative history. It's still required to make those payments to do so.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would point out that candidate Trump did not run on implementing Project 2025. In fact, when he was asked on the campaign trail about Project 2025, he said, I don't know anything about that. Who are those people? And yet he early on and quickly installed a key architect of Project 2025, Russ Vought, as the head of the Office of Management and Budget, which we know is the command and control center for the budget overseeing all federal agencies. And that's what Elon Musk is doing. he's implementing Project 2025, the same Project 2025 that candidate Trump said he knew nothing about. And he said that because he knew it was unpopular. He knew it would be unpopular to take the financial cop off the beat. And I want to start by talking about what's happening over at the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, because that is the cop on the beat to go after fraudsters and scammers who cheat Americans out of their hard-earned money. And they have returned billions of dollars to our constituents, to the consumers who have been victims of these scams. And in doing so, they've earned some powerful enemies who want to shut them down. And Elon Musk is doing that dirty work on behalf of those fraudsters. And there's something especially twisted about the richest man in the world shutting down an agency that helps victims of scammers and fraudsters recover just a little bit of their hard-earned money. And I find it especially interesting that the new self-declared head of the CFPB, Russell Vogt, told employees not to come into the office and essentially to stop work. Here's what he wrote, and I'm quoting, "Employees should not come into the office," unquote, and stand down from performing any work task, unquote. So this is an interesting situation. Federal employees continue to get paid, but the Trump administration tells them to stop doing their work. That apparently is what the Trump administration thinks is a good deal for the American taxpayer, to pay employees to not to do their job. So, Mr. Chairman, I have a simple question for you. Is that a practice that you pursue at the Fed, to pay your employees but tell them not to come to work? Have you done that? No. That wouldn't be very efficient, would it? No, it wouldn't. And yet, that's what the so-called Doge boys are doing. In addition to that, they're rummaging through the private, very personal, sensitive information of Americans at the Department of Treasury. So it seems to me that the Trump administration and Elon Musk are focused on everything except what Donald Trump said he was going to focus on during the campaign, which was to bring prices down. And when you look at the price of eggs these days, I noticed that Waffle House just instituted a new 50-cent per egg surcharge due to the nationwide rise in the cost of eggs. They said that's going to be a new surcharge, and other restaurants are following suit. You've seen that, right, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
And at the same time, the Trump administration has restricted federal agencies from providing the public with information about the bird flu,
see that,
avian flu, which is part of the cost of egg increases. So what we're really facing here is an administration that campaigned on bringing down prices and is not doing that. Did not campaign on Project 2025, and that's what they're doing. But when it comes to prices, Mr. Chairman, the president's also talking about significant increases in tariffs. Our Republican colleagues are also talking about passing a tax bill that gives weight disproportionately to the super wealthy, and which will add trillions to the deficit by their own account. They're talking about playing around with the baseline. So my question to you is simple. All things being equal, do big increases in tariffs and increasing the deficit and debt put upward pressure on inflation? Isn't that simple math?
You know, it really does remain to be seen what tariff policies will be implemented. And I just think it would be unwise to speculate when we really don't know. I mean, we see proposals, but it's so hard to say what's going to happen. And
well, last time the Trump administration was in office, the Fed took actions because they were concerned about the impact of increasing tariffs. Isn't that the case?
We wound up cutting rates in 2000 and I guess it was 19, but it really was because growth slowed and confidence was weak and the global economy was weakening. So the net effect of all that's what we look at. It's really not just tariffs. It's It's tariffs, immigration, fiscal policy, and regulatory policy. And those will all go into a mix, and we'll try to make sense of it and do what's right for monetary
Well,
policy.
if you could just get back to me on the question of increasing the deficit by trillions of dollars and what impact you believe that has on inflation and prices. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
I thought these guys would be
Senator
Senator
Lummis.
Lummis, I feel like the market.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Chairman Powell, for being with us today. I think you're aware of what direction my questions will take. They will be focused on the bank supervision function of the Fed. And I'd point out that when you and I were toddlers, 1956, the chairman of the Fed at the time, William McChesney Martin, said that the Federal Reserve Board is an agency of the Congress. Ben Bernanke said something similar in 2013 when he told Janet Yellen that, quote, Congress is our boss. Do you agree with that statement?
Yes, the way I always say it is that our supervision, our accountability runs through the legislative branch, not through the executive branch, as it does in many other forms of government.
Thank you for that, because I wouldn't have guessed that that was going to be your response. The way that the Fed has behaved for the last 4 years in its relationship with the U.S. Congress is to thumb its nose at Congress. Your staff has repeatedly stymied information requests from this committee, notably made by myself, the chairman, the ranking member, Senator Tillis, former Senator Pat Toomey, and others. In my experience, the Fed is a black hole. It consumes information, but it never releases it. Your fellow governors have personally misled me on at least 2 occasions with respect to Wyoming and digital assets. And in recent federal court filings, former Senator Pat Toomey has accused your staff of lying to him while providing technical assistance on legislation that passed in the National Defense Authorization Act in 2022. Now, I have behind me a statement by the Fed's General Counsel, one of the staff that's sitting behind you today, who said, quote, the Fed generally resists legislative prescriptions. Now, to me, that's thumbing his nose at Congress, the very people that you and I just agreed you are responsible to and the people depend on. So this is why the American people think there's a deep state. This is why they think there are faceless bureaucrats making policy to hurt the very people of this country. Just look at the mess the Fed made of Silicon Valley Bank. And I contend that there is a lack of understanding that is deliberate on the part of the Fed with respect to digital asset policy. So the Constitution says Congress is your boss, but somehow your staff have not gotten that message. So, Chairman Powell, do you commit on behalf of yourself and the Federal Reserve staff to comply fully with all document demands issued by this committee in a timely manner?
Sure.
Will you instruct your staff to be complete in their responses and not to obstruct the oversight functions of this committee?
Can you imagine how many of these things
We
you've done?
always work with the committee to
that you can't get
be
them
responsive to your requests.
Sell ice or
sometimes
cold.
they're beyond our capacity to respond to, and we work with committee and with committee staff to do that. But we're always responsive to
I believe he's
committee
been doing this
requests.
shit for a long
And I'll
time.
look forward to engaging
stop
with
and
you
I never
when
really
you
looked
feel
him up,
that our
but
requests
I know ever since I've been trading,
are
he's been
outside of the scope
the
of
main.
the oversight that we have over the Fed. Do you commit to disciplining or removing
I wonder what
any
the
staff
salary is
that
for
are
the
found to
sheriff.
have engaged in debanking activity, furthering Operation Choke Point 2.0, or other misconduct?
I can't make an open-ended commitment to remove anybody, but I will tell you that I am struck, and my colleagues and I are struck by the growing number of cases of what appears to be
Oh, that's scary. It's probably
debanking,
gonna stop
and
out.
we're determined to take a fresh look at that.
I got
In
in
fact,
on the
I took
sweep.
the thing
I got in
during
before the
the
sweep, and this
debanking
gun
hearing.
right here was a sweep.
When I
So
saw
this
that,
doesn't hold up.
we're now taking
My
it out
stop's
of the
only 1
manual.
point behind it.
So I thank you for
Because
that.
I don't want to.
Thank
I
you,
gotta
Mr.
make sure I
Chairman.
leave
My
at least
time's
26
up.
in the account. So I
Senator
can
Smith.
withdraw. At least attempt to withdraw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member, and thank you, Chair Powell, for being with us today. I appreciate your presence here.
Too many wicks up here.
I'd like to start with the issue of the rising cost of home ownership, something that I know is of great interest to many of my colleagues on this committee. I know, Mr. Chair, that you care a lot about home ownership and making home ownership accessible and available to folks. My colleague, Senator Lummis, as well, many of the folks on my side of the aisle as well. And so I think this is something that we can agree on, that the rising cost of home ownership is a big challenge for our constituents, for Americans. And one of the big pressures, there are many, but one of the big pressures is the rising cost of home insurance. In Minnesota, families, seniors are struggling to manage a nearly 40% increase in home insurance rates. We've seen this over the last 7 years or so, and I know, Chair Powell, that you've told this committee in the past that rising cost of buying insurance for your home has been a source of inflation as we've been trying to manage inflation. Now, I don't know anyone who doesn't see this crisis of rising insurance rates as being caused by extreme weather events. We've seen massive flooding in southeastern America, United States. We've seen flooding in Minnesota. We've seen fires in Mountain West and California. These are climate-related events. And that's not a political position. That is just a fact. So, we've got banks that, of course, require, understandably, that a homeowner provide insurance as a predicate for getting a mortgage. So there's a big question about what's going to happen when insurance becomes unaffordable, or in some parts of the country, just literally not available, and what impact that would have on the mortgage markets, on the value of American homes. Just last week, a new analysis from First Street showed that overall, the value of U.S. real estate could be reduced by $1.4 trillion, colleagues, over the next 30 years due to unaccounted for climate risk. That's the cost, the risk of not being able to afford home insurance because of these extreme weather events. And the prospect of trillions of dollars of property become uninsurable is clearly a risk, it seems to me, for market instability, both in the rental as well as the mortgage market.
You know what I mean? Things like that. They know
question,
exactly what
Chair Powell, is given these trends, how do you think the Fed and how do you think we should be thinking about the challenges that these events are going to pose to insurance markets and to the overall financial stability of the economy? I'm asking you to comment specifically on climate change, because I understand my colleagues on the other side of the aisle see that as a political question. It's more like what you see as the risk to financial stability here.
So let me quickly note that we don't regulate or supervise insurance companies for the most part, but we're seeing the same thing, which is both banks and insurance companies are pulling out of areas, coastal areas and things like that, or areas where there are a lot of fires. So what that is going to mean is that, if you fast forward 10 or 15 years, there are going to be regions of the country where you can't get a mortgage, there won't be ATMs, there won't, the banks won't have branches and things like that. That's a possibility coming up down the road. It's not that the banks will stay there and keep making loans in the face of evidence of disaster, or that insurance companies will do right policies. They can cancel those policies every year. So I think the risk is that they just won't be there, and that people won't be able to get them. That's really the issue.
And It seems to me that that would be a massive source of instability in our economy overall if you were to see that kind of dramatic decline in home ownership, home values, not to mention the disruption that would occur if people literally couldn't be in their homes anymore.
So I think it's going to fall, if that happens, it'll fall on homeowners and
Right.
residents, but it'll also fall on state and local governments. Which you see happening now, where they're stepping in states where insurance is going away, private insurance. You're seeing states step in because they want those areas to remain prosperous. So
And that's what I was saying. I don't think
it's a
any,
financial stability
I think
issue,
the
but it
programs
certainly will have significant
works good
economic
when you
consequences.
used to see it in the same
Well, certainly to try to figure out how to provide reinsurance as an example in the places where commercial insurance isn't available would be a massive impact on state budgets, if to follow your chain of thinking. And I know in this committee I've heard some of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle talk about the challenges overall with flood insurance, just as an example, and the massive expense that would have for us as well. I raise this, colleagues, because I think that this is an important issue that we need to be paying attention to. I do think it has a fundamental impact on the overall health of our economy as we look not even down the road, but where we are right now. So I'm out of time. Thank you, Chair Powell. I have a question. You and I have talked quite frequently about my deep, keen interest in the Community Reinvestment Act, and I'll follow up with a question on that for the record.
Thank you, Senator Smith. Senator Haggerty.
Thank you, Chairman Scott. Chairman Powell, it's good to see you here today. Welcome. I want to start by talking to you a bit about markets and inflation. Less than 6 months ago, you expressed some serious concerns about labor market weakness and the risk of persistent inflation. But since then, the FOMC has begun its easing cycle and cut its target rate by 100 basis points, as you mentioned in your opening remarks. Now, in the January meeting, the FOMC has telegraphed that it felt both the labor market and inflation have reached a point where you're comfortable maintaining its target range. My question is this. The recent market data, including last week's strong jobs report, indicate that the economy is on firm ground. Indeed, swaps markets have begun to price in fewer and fewer cuts this year. And I just wanted to talk broadly about these market conditions that you see. Do you see evidence of a higher neutral rate emerging at this point?
Yes, I mean, let me say there was a lot of reason to be concerned about downside risk in the labor market toward the middle of this year, but really that concern has diminished significantly. The labor market's very strong. I think the evidence is, my own view, and there are many different views on this, but is that the neutral rate will have risen meaningfully. Very hard to be precise about it from what it was. It was clearly very, very low before the pandemic. It extraordinarily low, historically so. But yes, I think it's moved up, and many of my colleagues on the FOMC feel that way too.
It certainly seems that way. I'd like to turn now to what seems to be a very popular topic right at this point, and that's the CFPB. In your response to Senator Britt's question earlier, you confirmed that when the CFPB submits quarterly funding requests, the Fed is not in a position to exercise any discretion over what the funds are used for. Is that correct?
As long as it's compliant with the law.
It just strikes me that the Fed is not in a position to hold the CFPB accountable for what it does or how it spends its money. Congress hasn't been allowed to hold the CFPB accountable for what it does or how it spends its money. It looks like no one has been able to hold the CFPB accountable at all. And now I hear, complaints coming from every corner, particularly from the other side, complaints about the excessive delegation of authority to a Republican CFPB director when this entity was intentionally created to be wholly unresponsive to elected officials. So I just find that quite rich. Before I close, I'd like to come to a point on climate. And particularly the Fed's forays into climate activism that have taken place over these past 4 years and the recent retrenchment that we've seen. It's one thing for the Fed to disassociate from its past climate activism in a press release, but to credibly claim that it's divorced itself from partisan climate policies, the Fed needs to do more than just issue statements. It needs to actually end its climate policies. The Fed's independence from politics is a headline topic at the moment, of course. And while much attention has been given to potential external pressures on the Fed, I think it's also critical that we scrutinize how the Fed's own regulation and supervision might be utilized to in some way politicize the institution. So when the central bank strays from its mandate by embracing partisan climate policies, The Fed embroils itself in controversial political debates and invites legitimate political scrutiny. So I just want to urge the Fed to refocus entirely on its core statutory mandates. I know it's a commitment that both you and I share, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here with us today.
Vice Top CL.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Warnock.
Thank you very much, Chairman Scott, and welcome again, Chairman Powell. I want to echo the words of Ranking Member Warren and so many of my colleagues today on DOGE and Project 2025's illegal attack on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Certainly the Bureau was not created to be dismantled. And since its inception, the CFPB has been the only federal agency solely dedicated to protecting Americans' wallets and pocketbooks from scammers and predatory companies in financial services. The CFPB reduced costs for Americans, returning more than $21 billion to Americans who've been cheated since its inception. I want us to focus on that as folks are talking about chasing after waste and fraud and abuse. The CFPB has returned more than $21 billion to Americans. Make no mistake, this attack on the CFPB will increase costs for Americans, and it will give the green light to fraudsters and predatory actors seeking to cheat hardworking Americans. And so, Chairman Powell, thousands of Georgians of all political stripes have written into my office, and they are alarmed by an unelected billionaire and his hacksters' dangerous attempts to access Americans' private data and the Treasury Department systems that control $6 trillion in annual payments to millions